You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almin, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
And a good evening from Benoni, east of Johannesburg, South Africa. Hello to all our Light family around the world and also to our Light family here in South Africa. I'm your host, Paul. Nico is on the sound desk, handling everything, and we are running strong. Welcome to the show. Eckhart Tolle, the healer and author, says, give up defining yourself, either to yourself or to others. You won't die. You will come to life. And don't be concerned with how others define you. When they define you, they're limiting themselves, so it's their problem. Whenever you interact with people, don't be there primarily as a function or a role, but as a field of conscious presence. You can only lose something that you have, but you cannot lose something that you are. Tonight's show is all about how we're going to give up defining ourselves, why, and what the processes are that we are currently experiencing. And the show is also known as How to Dissolve the Catch-22 in One's Life. Welcome to the next hour of being together as a light family around the globe, around the world. Thank you for tuning in. This is Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. So, introduction, just to tell you what my week's experiences have been like and see if you can look at them as well in the same light. Maybe you just can get some references there. But all reference points seems to have gone. As you keep grasping out for things, as you keep looking at things, as you keep working towards things, all of those things are particularly shifting and very, very stressful at times. People seem to be only referring to what they know. So they don't have any reference points anywhere, but they're looking at any one point to refer to something. And really all that I can really look at is they can only find that's within themselves. And what's within themselves is programming and beliefs. They're holding so strong onto that. Incredible just to watch it all going on. It's causing a huge amount of strain and stress within. And as we make this huge push to dissolve the old, we must remember that Almin has said that the old is gone and the new is arriving fast. But still, what I'm seeing is the human section aspects of the world are just continuing to play out the enormous attachment to their life as they know it. We see this especially with our expectations and assumptions as we move from the state of fear into full trust. Often we've spoken as well on this radio show about living in different paradigms, living in different aspects of duality, and living in different realities all at once. So we're going to get into some depth about that as we go through it along the way. But it seems to me that attention is the new currency for us, and that we need to learn to be completely attentive to the way that we're feeling and seeing, reacting and responding, because everything is so much up on the surface at this moment in time. You know, Nick and I were just talking earlier about people that seem to live on the surface of their life, and they don't go deeper into their life from fear of feeling the unknown. And we're not just talking about the materialistic aspect they're just looking after themselves and everybody else is selfish. And so this conversation goes on. And by the way, you might be losing us on this particular radio show because once again we have some signal issues, but it looks like we're back up at this moment in time. So we're talking about commitment issues within people and humanity around us. But at the end of the day, people also don't seem to be able to commit to themselves. It's definitely feels as if there's a crossroads that is here, that we are living on face value sometimes, and we can't do what we fear most. And I think perhaps it just might be an aspect of, of fear of living in the rejection of life altogether. And on a deep level, there seems to be a fear of connecting to other humans. We can't communicate with them through various channels, either over phones or one-on-one. And there's also sometimes a need just to project a particular image. And all of these things are just a roller coaster of experiences as we go through life. But, trouble has started through humanity, obviously, as we degraded or dissolved into a new wheel, into a new issue. And as we rise up through the wheel, we become more and more able to see these things along the I'm not speaking too well tonight, am I? But let's start that poll process again. What I'm trying to really say is that humanity is the one that stands either tall or stands small for themselves. And they need to learn what their power is as a master, but then also learn what their process of ascension and awakening is all about. And I think as this awakening increases and changes, so we're going to see the ability to dissolve the catch-22s, because, wow, we see so many catch-22s happening. We can't do one thing because of another thing, and we're waiting for that to happen before this goes. But Nick and I are learning to forge forward in all of these particular processes. Quite amazing to be able to look across the room at him, and then he'll just look at me and we'll know instantly what we have to do, whereas nobody else is perhaps able to keep up at times on those particular things. So this catch-22 situation is a very, very difficult process for humanity. But that's what this radio show is about, just spending time as a light family, looking at these things within ourselves, and then really just establishing for ourselves what it is that we have to do. So we're going to go now back to August 2017, to when we had the solar eclipse, and that's where a lot of processes really began. There's an audio here where Almeen says that the old reality is gone and the new reality is beginning. And she says that's what a total solar eclipse is all about. And in this preview of a webinar that was coming up just after all of that, Almeen explains how we have been at this particular stage many times before. That is the stage where mankind's craziness escalates, it sinks even deeper into illusion, and the urge for us to withdraw from them becomes even stronger. But it's this physical withdrawal that has led to the various Lemurian and Atlantean catastrophes of the past. And so now a different kind of attachment must be cultivated. So let's listen now to this class that Almeen gave August 2017. It's called Humanity's Death Society, and that it's contagious.
Beloved ones, why exactly do we need such a very astronomical sign that the old reality is gone and the new reality is beginning, which a total solar eclipse is all about? Well, we have been at this particular stage many times before over the ages. And the steps in this stage is like this. Mankind's craziness escalates because they live in opposites. The more enlightened we become, the more in darkness they sink. So as long as we are living with them in opposites, in some way they make us their opposite, because the dream of duality is the dream of man. And as we rise, they sink. Then, we, in the book Journey to the Heart of God, we have discussed that when opposites are extremely far apart, it becomes very, very uncomfortable to cohabitate together. So, as they sink deeper and deeper into illusion, it becomes more and more unbearable. And incidentally, that part where that is explained is under the section of the steps to conflict resolution in the book Journey to the Heart of God. It becomes unbearable for us to be in society because the density is nauseating. It hits you in the chest when you are in a crowd of people that are fear-based and angry and desperate and guilty and all these things. And in pain, most definitely. But this is extremely distressing to us. So in the past, what happened is that the original ones would at this point withdraw from human society, but physically withdraw. They would go to an island, they would go in the mountains, they would get a space where they can live at their higher level. Because being around man continually pulls us into their paradigm. Now, we have, as the way showers, been asked to create and live in higher and higher and higher realities. The reality of Godhood, it had 441 principles, the resurrected realities, getting to the point where our reality is different than theirs, but we still stay among them. Now, there are a few problems with this, and there's a few problems if we didn't do it. Major ones. See, if we continue to try and live our life at a higher level, but man is continually reminding us of death and endings and beginnings and the things that come with duality and polarity, then it's very difficult for us to maintain the vision that is required to live in a different reality than those around you. In this way, I have in the recent retreats made the statement that man is deadly to immortal beings because their death society is everywhere. In their entertainment, what do they watch? Death. In their games, what do they play? Death. What kind of foods do they eat? Well, foods that bring death. By staying among them, we are exposed over and over and over to that which we are asked and is our destiny to overcome, the illusion of life and death. When the illusion of life and death is gone, when it is an integrated reality, what remains? Eternal existence. And eternal has to be understood to be transient eternal existence. Because if there is constant renewal, self-regeneration, self-rebirthing, it constantly dies to the old way of being. So we are continually new eternally. This is very difficult to maintain amongst man, and as it becomes almost unbearable, the original ones have always withdrawn and created a sacred place. Well, so why didn't that work? Why do you think, my beloved ones, that humanity is constantly pulling in catastrophes? Every major catastrophe, the sinking of Atlantis, the sinking of Lemuria, and both sank multiple times, etc. Polar shifts. These things have always happened, doing great destruction to the earth when the original ones withdrew into their sacred spaces, when they left the society of man. Of course, the answer is we need to figure out why, and secondly, we need to find an alternative way. And the alternative way cannot be a martyrdom of self-sacrifice, of incredible discomfort of living amongst humanity. So, secondly, let's look at why this happens.
And the Sia Almin was talking about humanity's death society and how contagious it is for all of us. really fascinating insights there. And she really talks how hard it hits. I feel waves and waves of that coming at me at times. And then you've got to learn to dissolve it. One interesting process that I've been through for the last 2 to 3 months is that there's been this fire within the belly area, within the abdominal area. And only once we had removed somebody that had been in our space and dissolved that particular relationship did that go away. And it was really linked to these aspects of assumptions and expectations, all based on one's programmings and inability then to really, I suppose the word is, respond to what was needed at that particular time. You know, often also on the show we've spoken about the different realities that we're living in. And it's only recently I've begun to look at the fact that this can only happen when we are still living in linear time, because if everything is happening all at once and everything is already all there at once, but our attention might just be focused on other particular things, so we don't see the bigger picture at any particular time, then we can go back to our basic info. And this is based really on the Explorers of Consciousness webinar, online class with Almeen, where she says what happens at the end of awakening. And that has brought a whole lot of other thoughts and processes up for me, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. But let's just go back to the basics of things. If you look at the download of Principles of Living in High Magic PDF book, which is available on Spiritual Journeys or Almeen Diary, and we just take ourselves right back to the beginning of the evolutionary stages of man. And I think it's very important that we never forget these particular aspects, because otherwise our spiritual journey becomes incredibly technical as we try to focus and build and break down and work and understand on what is going on at any particular moment. But we have to remember that with Almeen's teachings, we are often living in the future in terms of all of those things are coming forward for us to actually work and assimilate and understand. And then we bring it into being, and therefore the future then becomes the present. But there are 3 different aspects that we should never, ever forget and take ourselves back to. And I'd like to use a bit of time tonight for us to go and examine some of that, because then we can see through this process that if we understand that linear time does not exist and that we are experiencing everything at once, we can also understand that we are experiencing perhaps what we would have referred to the past or the future and the present all at once, and in multiple ways. So let's take ourselves back to the evolutionary stages of man. It's printed again in the Principles of Living in High Magic and just rephrased in slightly different terms. And the first one we know as the stage of transformation, which is the stages of being human. And the first one is ego identification or pristine humanness. And you'll know from some of the recent work provided by the SEER that we are now focusing on some of those particular principles. So it shows that we are going back to these aspects of dissolving another layer of ego identification. So these human stages or stage of transformation has 3 stages of progression that we need to work through: the initiate, the adept, and the master. And then number 2 is the aspect of God consciousness that comes up into that. And this is 3 stages itself, which is called the emptiness or the fullness, and then re-entering the human condition. And then the 3rd stage that comes up in that is ascended mastery, that this is 3 stages: automatic action, the deeper bliss, and reclaiming emotion. And as I read out these particular aspects of these stages, as we move into this pyramid of all beingness, this cosmic expansion that we are building into, actually experiencing in all its fullness, then we can see perhaps, where we are at some of that. Definitely in the state of ego identification, or perhaps I should say something that I used to identify as ego responses and reaction. But I think the deep gift for me there is to say that I can see further, I can see deeper than I ever had before in that. But still the programming of ego identification is still within the self, quite obviously. Right, so now we move on into the stages of transmutation, otherwise known as godhood. And that's where a God being in the flesh goes through several stages. Number 1 is living from the eye of the storm, where we become an observer of life from an eternal perspective. And number 2, where we become the observer and the observed, watching ourselves as we re-engage with life. I think that is an interesting dynamic that I'm certainly experiencing at this moment. Then we move into the stages of resurrection, also known as the stages of transfiguration, where resurrection has 3 stages in which deeply mystical experiences take place. Resurrection has the characteristic of integrating opportunities into harmonious and unified expression. So 1, we unify our inner and outer space. We spoke about that a few weeks ago. It's very disorienting at first, but this stage manifests internal intent in outer circumstance. So as we unify those two, so the 2 worlds that we have had, the inner and outer worlds, then merge together. The second part of this stage of transfiguration is that we combine life and death together. It fills the resurrected master with a deep eternal peace, as a sense of our immortality throughout the ages stretches ahead over never-ending horizons. And the third part has been rephrased here, called the razor's edge. I'm identifying so much with this right now. It's a stage in which no illusions can be harbored without evoking immediate responses and lessons in the environment. The resurrected master stands before a most powerful evolutionary leap by transcending to a reality beyond the subatomic building blocks of life, of frequency and light. For this, we need all the power that we can muster. It's power released by dissolving illusions. And this is what I was speaking about earlier, is the aspects of still living in fear. And as we learn to trust ourselves more and more, and the process that we play within ourselves, within the cosmic unfolding of life, is then we begin to dissolve those illusions. But what a tremendous amount of work it takes for all of us, and a tremendous amount of trust. And number 4, and we've been working on this for the last 2 years really, the white light reality. It's the uncharted territory of a life that has gone beyond duality. It's a life in which immaculate high magic flows effortlessly through the vessel of the Master's being. Isn't that fascinating? So, of course, we know that these aspects of transfiguration, transmutation, transformation all take us into a completely different state of transcending everything that is. But there you can see within the 3 aspects of humanness or ego identity, of godhood, and then the next stage really, stage of resurrection. You can see that we are experiencing all of those things at once. So it's not as if we are simply dissolving one, moving to the next, dissolving that and moving to the next. We're beginning to experience all of these stages all at once. And this can be incredibly confusing at times. I think for some people very terrifying. But as we take it and we could just dissect it bit by bit, and we begin to put some easy understanding in it, we begin to manifest a different way. And we hope that this has explained things for you on a easier level to actually work with. That's what we're all about at Radio Belvaspatar South Africa. So let's give up defining ourselves. Let's not concern about that. Let's be where we are at any particular moment and bring out whatever is within us and express it accordingly without fear as we go along. Trust is manifesting. Right, so we've got a nice, beautiful audio by Diane. Was given in the early hours of this morning, or just midnight to 1 a.m. this morning. Let's listen to what Diane has to share. It's quite a long, beautiful process. And as she shares with us, the aspect of life unfolding then comes out. So great to have Diane with us on this one.
I know it's late, I know you're weary, I know your plans don't include me. Still here we are, both of us lonely, longing for shelter. Why don't you stay? Good evening all. It's just after midnight, and tonight I wondered if anyone would join me as I just go through all the musings and the wonderings, and maybe we can learn something together. I'm sitting in my bed with my gown on, and it's quite cold in South Africa. I've got my hot water bottle here and my bull terrier lying at my feet. And I look around my room and I see these beautiful pictures of the girl with the pearl earring gazing at me. I see a magnificent little sculpture of Modigliani's girl with the black hat. I see my grandson's picture stuck on the side of my wardrobe. And there's a beautiful picture that I've loved since I was a girl, and you may know it, although it's quite old, of an angel shepherding two children across a bridge that is just about to break, and the water gushes, underneath it. I've always loved that, and now I look at it, for example, tonight when I cannot sleep, and I wonder at this restlessness, and tonight I'm just going to muse a few things, and maybe you can relate to them. And I've just listened to one of the meditations that Almin has. I think it's the Ultimate Meditation 3, where she talks about the church bell, which is almost like a reference point for the villagers. And the first thing they hear when they are born is that bell. And that continuously rings through their lives. There's weddings and there's deaths, and it's the last thing they hear before they die. And I wondered at that, and I was thinking about the body and how that seems to be initially the reference point. And it's from that point that we seem to construct our lives. And I've been thinking lately that possibly it is because the being exists that the body then is manifest, not the other way around. Not that the body, is manifest and then the being becomes visible. And it seems a strange irony that from the formlessness, formless can be viewed. From that which has no form, we can then only view that which has form, and that's quite interesting for me, and it's the paradox that all mystics speak of, and Almin particularly. I've been writing down little quips and using the words "roll me away," and one of them sort of goes something like this. There's quite a few. The one I've got is that gratitude rolls me over and I disappear. The earth rolls over, the cosmos rolls over, and me too. Another one, the tide rolls in and then withdraws, and I observe its movement from the unmoving. So once again, that which is unmoving observes that which moves. And it makes me think about and reflect on the being which never moves, which observes, which never changes, which has no desire to grow, for it is complete. It is the undying, it is the unborn. And I find that extremely comforting. For strangely enough, sometimes in the middle of the night, I'm racked with fear and worry, and I can feel the ache of the body. And I have to remind myself, and I know Paul often does this as well, we just repeat again and again, love, praise, gratitude. I am that I am. And then slowly the clouds pass and the sky remains. That it's simply clouds which pass, simply thoughts which pass. And so maybe as the ego thins away, the beauty of the being is fully revealed. As I gaze around my room, I see books because I was. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening the circle of understanding and compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And I see there the danger of thinking we are separate, that we can only love a handful of those that surround us. I mean, as Albert Einstein points out, the tragedy of experiencing ourselves as apart from everyone else is that this delusion becomes a prison. And sadder yet, we become increasingly unnerved at the possibility of freedom. When the barriers come down, we don't know what to do. We need a bit more warning about what it feels like when the walls start tumbling down. And the residue of the old, the stories of the old, the woundings of the old, boy, do they cling. And it is so difficult to dislodge them. And eventually you can, unclaw them and let them go. But yeah, I've also realized that, and I know Almin a couple of days ago spoke about the tyranny of the mind, and I've become a little suspicious of the mind and those thoughts that it sends. Not that I think the mind doesn't have a place. I think the mind is astounding in its place. It can create, it can conceive of complexities, and it is magnificent in those roles. But we cannot go to the mind to tell us who we are. And I remember of the quote from the Christian Bible where Christ speaks of the truth setting us free, and how that quote is bandied about willy-nilly. And I've come to realize, for the moment at least, that the truth that is spoken of speaks of the truth of finding out who we really are, that we are not the body, we are not the mind, that we are our true being. Call it what you will, being, essence, infiniteness, supreme intelligence. It seems that that being, the beauty of that being, really is who we are. I'm just turning over in my journal here, and I've picked up a quote that Almin seems to really speak to us with. In the silent depths of our being, concepts like power and movement and growth fall away, yielding to rapturous peace. And yes, I can really relate to that peace at times. And in the middle of the night like this, there are moments of deep despair, and there are moments of rapturous peace. I'm just looking at another comment about the heart does not open until the mind has been silenced. Only then will the infinite preciousness of life reveal itself. There are these beautiful tidbits on this buffet that we can eat from. And sometimes I think we don't realize what we are discovering. Sometimes I think we are afraid of our own stillness. And yeah, it takes time, and maybe that's just an idea as well, to discover our timelessness. So from a position of timelessness, we can perceive time. From a position of formlessness, we can perceive form. From a position of stillness, we can perceive movement. I'm just looking at these, and I do love the saying that the true battle of the light promoter is against illusion. And there's just great delight sometimes at knowing that, my God, you were inside of me all along. How did I miss that? That perhaps the idea of a journey is an illusion, that we do not even have to take a step, because the kingdom of God is within. The being has always been there. I think I've just realized that over the last couple of months. People, I'm just talking, and I'm hoping that you can squeeze the juice out of this moment as well. And I think I'm going to end there. And thank you for staying with me. Maybe we can talk again soon. Good night, all.
And there we had Diane sharing with us her late night, extremely early morning musings and just reflections on her processes and her current experiences. And thank you, Diane, how beautifully open and just honest you were. And fantastic. Thank you for that share. As Almin says, in A Glimpse into the Unfathomable, that mankind is like the aperture of the eternal eye of the infinite, through which self-examination takes place. Mankind produces the contracted vision to examine the details. And I think that's something we need to always pay attention at, to just examine the details without getting caught up in the programming and belief systems around it. Because as we examine them, we go deeper and deeper, and then we can commit to that particular process to dissolve what no longer belongs, and therefore we begin to experience the transcended process of change. Almin's going to give us another audio now about why it is easy to manifest good intentions and difficult to manifest the bad. Here, the seer elaborates why it's easy to manifest good intentions, because they're already represented in our reality, and conversely why it's difficult to manifest the negative, because illusion has no real component. She then proceeds to answer the obvious question as to why we appear to manifest so much negativity on the planet. So spot on, even though it's an old class. Let's go with Almin, why it is easy to manifest good intentions.
Why is it easy to manifest good intentions or non-harmful intentions? Because they already exist. It is easy to play a note on the piano which emphasizes that note when the note is there and it's already on the piano. It's virtually impossible to play a note on the piano that isn't there. So how is it then that practitioners of black magic, in actual fact, create ill intentions to hurt somebody and have it be effective if they are using a note that isn't on the piano? By making their own fake piano. In other words, we have spoken quite a bit about how realities form, and we have said that a two-dimensional flat space or a reality requires 3 points. In the case of black magicians, they use emotion like pain or something, and they use blood, which is a power fluid, and they need a third object that emits power. The old shadows that were on the earth had the Aztecs and these people gather gold for them, for their black magic practices to control the planet. Gold is such an item of power. You can also have a magical item that is, quote, a power object, but it requires these 3 points. Then they make fake reality, which incidentally is sort of like an elastic band. It has to snap back and hit the one who did it, meaning it creates karma. It's easy, therefore, to do good manifestations. It's extremely difficult to do ones that are non-life enhancing. But now you may ask, why is there then such misery and poverty and hunger on earth? It's not through bad intentions. It is through belief systems. The only time that somebody who creates a fake reality, meaning they do black magic, can injure us is if we believe they can. That opens the door to it. Now, I have in the past explained that there are certain precautions that you take in your life so that it makes you more able to live in a sacred cocoon that's impervious to hostile intent. That is because there are simply times when we are a little depressed, we're a little sick, we're down, or something like that. Until such time that we live our godhood fully, those mechanisms won't even be necessary. But very, very few on the planet are at that point. So we take some precautions and then forget about it. The ill intentions of people, the malice, the greed, these things, are not really what's forming these imperfect realities on earth. It is belief systems. Belief systems causes awareness particles not to flow, but to become structured. It's like they create boxes for themselves that they can't get out of. It seems like you can't get out of poverty because the belief system has erected its walls. That is why we have not really stressed anything to do with be careful that you don't manifest negative emotions. They're very hard to do, and we have good intent. Much love to you, my brothers and sisters.
And there the Seer Almin was discussing why it's easy to manifest good intentions and difficult to manifest the bad. Really incredible. Okay, so in the Principles of High Magic we hear that far beyond the horizons of evolution, glimpsed by masters throughout bygone ages, previously unknown stages of evolution have revealed themselves to the holy ones among man. Life is birthed from its repetitive cycles around and around the walls of its incubation chamber. With this newfound freedom comes an uncharted journey into unknown territory. A few of the great lights among men have forged ahead into previously unexplored stages of development, bravely leaving behind the familiar reference points found in the confines of a reality based on duality. Mapping out their reference points, mapping out their journey into the unknown so that others may follow, they have boldly challenged the beliefs of man, turning their backs on the boundaries of mortality and the human paradigm of limitation. These light beacons amongst humanity are called the original ones, or the ancient ones, in all the writings of Scripture and holy scrolls or tablets where the future is foretold. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move to a beautiful, fairly, recent audio by Almin called The Chant of Atonement. It was beautiful, only 9 minutes of it, and this was given in anticipation of the Night of the Angels about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's part 1 of 3 of the Chant of Atonement by the Seer Almin, as she was channeling her mystical vision of the battle between ancient or angel gods and dragons. It's a macrocosmic battle which reflects the microcosmic suppression of our nervous system, or the angels, by mind dragons, the consequent denial of the realities of magic, and the impetus to break this tyranny. This chant is accompanied by the Escharogots, the alphabets of the angels, as featured in Almin's Divinity Quest in Mastering the Tools of the Gods information and course. So we're going to play that now. It's 9 minutes given as a meditation. I'm going to invite you all just to close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and let's move into this process where we allow our nervous system, we allow the mind, and we break the tyranny of everything that was, and just spend the next little while together as a light family as we listen to Almin's Chant of Atonement.
Infinite One among us, to thee the glory forever. The devotion of our service is thine. In thy purity and power we dwell. May all hearts know the miraculous gift of thy presence, for thou hast redeemed us from the capture of our own imaginings. In the perfection of thy holy intentions do we trust, and to the majestic purposes of thine intent do we surrender. Awake now, O creatures, and let your hearts rejoice. In praise and love and gratitude shall you be exalted. Through the adoration of your actions shall the way before you be gracefully unfolded.
And there we were listening to the Chant of Atonement by the Seer Almin. It is available on YouTube as a download if you wish, and some beautiful visuals to go with it, because the alphabet of the angels is also shown in that particular clip. Go and listen to it with absolute beauty and use it accordingly. So Almin's also been talking about the Atlanteans influencing the weather patterns, and there's some audio up there in Almin Diary. But then comes the ceremony to balance the weather, which is scheduled for this coming Saturday, May the 12th. And the question was how to prepare for the ceremony. Question: what can I do to prepare for this ceremony to balance the weather? It is important to me that I do my part in service to the planet and her creatures to help bring balance to the weather and prevent any further deliberate disruptions. Almin answers: firstly, honor the rhythms of your body, the time to rest, the time to work, and the promptings from within that inspire your passion and joy. I recommend that you reread the section on passion and joy as printed in Journey to the Heart of God. Secondly, listen to and respect the guidance that comes from your emotions. And you can see the 12 pure pairs of emotions on the Belvaspita site or in your manual if you have that. Almin says that technologies exist that program emotions artificially. She says that it is important to get to know what your own authentic responses to your environment are and what are not. When it's programmed, you will feel a significant increase in the body's stress. Be aware that others may be unaware, but they're experiencing it too. Interact sparingly and cautiously if a flood of emotions you feel isn't yours. And this brings us now to what I was saying earlier, that attention is the new currency, available on Almin Diary. And if you are subscribed to Almin Diary site or Spiritual Journeys, you would have had a download of the 585 principles, which are also being discussed on the Explorers of Consciousness and on the online classes there. And there's just 4 that I want to point out. They're the first 4 that I'm looking at and working on very beautifully. And the first one is Adoration of the Infinite. And second one is the highly refined frequency and light. And the third is the ultimate refinement of life. And the fourth is passionate exploration. So if you don't have that by now, let me know, and we can always send you a Dropbox link. No problem at all. And that takes us really to the end of our show. We hope that you have found some support and some time spending together with the Light family around the world. And we hope that you have gained some understanding and insight for yourself that will deepen your journey as we step forward into more and more states of aware awakening. Almin says, if we can live one moment gloriously, and then the next, and the next, greatness is born. But it comes one choice at a time. We're now going to play out with a beautiful song by Enya, If I Could Be Where You Are, from me here in the studio. Paul saying thank you very much for staying with us. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to have you with us and to be able to share from the heart in every authentic way we possibly can. And it's great to know that we are connected around the world and connected together eternally. Thank you to Nico in the studio. We know there's been some signal issues, and just to let you know that the fiber optic people have dug right up to our front gate. Isn't that exciting? We'll see what unfolds in the weeks that are yet to come. From us here in Benoni to our Light family around the world, to South Africans and the rest of the world, northern, southern, eastern and western, it is goodbye. Here is Enya, If I Could Be Where You Are, and until next week, goodbye.
This moment, only in my dreams, you're missing, but you're always a heartbeat from me. Now without you, I don't know where you are. I keep watching, I keep hoping, but time keeps us apart. Is there a way I can find you? Is there a sign I should know? Is there a road I could follow to bring you back home? Winter lies before me, now you're so far away. In the darkness of my dreaming, the light of you will stay. If I could be close beside you, if I could be where you are, if I could reach out and touch you and bring you back home. Is there a way I can find you? Is there a sign I should
You've been listening to Radio Belbaspita, South Africa. Thank you for listening and sharing in our discussion. Should you have any questions with regards to the healing modality of Belbaspita or have any healing needs, please send us an email to info@belbaspita.co.za or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.